Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. You've reached episode number 301, entitled Maintenance. It was published on Thursday, the 27th of October, 2022. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and in a few short minutes I'll be joined by my good friend David Wormsley so that we can have our chat about WordPress site maintenance. But before then, a few pieces of housekeeping. Black Friday, Halloween, Cyber Monday, it's all around the corner, and if you're in the mood for shopping for WordPress specific deals, we have got your back. We've got a special page. It's a searchable, filterable page, and it contains all of the deals in the WordPress space that we've heard of to date. The URL is really easy to remember. It's wpbuilds.com/black. Once more, wpbuilds.com/black. And over there, you'll be able to find the deals by searching and filtering. You'll be able to determine how much you're going to get off and when the deals begin and end, and so on and so forth. If you are a product owner and would like your deal featured on that page, please add it. You can do that for free. Just go to the top of the page, click the big blue Add Your Deal button, fill out the form, make sure to do it correctly, otherwise it won't make it onto the page, and hopefully we will get it on that page as soon as possible for others to experience. Also, if you're a WordPress company and you would like to boost or supercharge your deal listing, we've got 4 sponsorship slots available right at the top of the page. You'll see they're in little black rectangles, and click the Find Out More button. It's a yellow button, and hopefully you'll be able to get your product on that page as well. Once more, it's at wpbuilds.com/black. Another curious thing that we've just begun is our WP Builds Awards. It's not like a normal awards. It's completely rigged. It's completely ridiculous. And really the idea is that we're raising money for the charity Big Orange Heart, which I'm sure if you know anything about them, you'll agree is a worthwhile cause. It's at wpbuilds.com/awards, and you can nominate yourself or somebody else. All you have to do is prove that you've donated $20 to Big Orange Heart, and you are guaranteed to win a particular category. Like I say, it's just a bit of fun, but hopefully it will raise some desperately needed resources for Big Orange Heart. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with The Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more by going to go.me/WP Builds. Once more, go.me/WP Builds. And we really do thank GoDaddy Pro for their continuing support of the WP Builds podcast. Okay, today we are on episode number 301. It's David and I having a chat, and it's all about maintenance. Rewind the clock 15 or so years ago, and most people building websites that I know, at least anyway, were building them on a bit of a production line. Build and then ship, and then look for new clients. Build and then ship. And then somebody, and we think it might have been Ryan Sullivan from SiteCare, got the idea of setting up dedicated WordPress maintenance. This is back in 2013. Ever since then, this has been a real part of everybody's WordPress business. The idea that you can have some kind of recurring revenue, some kind of ongoing support. But what is it that we're covering? Exactly what are we talking about? Are we talking about every single change? Do we cover the server level? What if they're on some sort of quirky server? What about security fixes and things like that? There's a whole load that we go into, and I hope that you enjoy the podcast.
Welcome to another in the Business Bootcamp series where we relearn everything we know about building WordPress sites and running a web design business from start to finish. We're at the start of season 5, which is the last in this bootcamp series. And this is all about what happens after the website is built. And today we are going to be talking about maintenance. So Nathan and I are taking contrasting approaches in getting our businesses running and our first client site built. She's a lawyer with no previous site. And I think we'll just run straight into it. So Maintenance.
Yeah.
Is it it's the first on our show notes here is this a profession in its own right?
It certainly has become so, hasn't it? If you rewound the clock 10 years, was this even a thing, maintenance of websites? Because for me, it really wasn't. Well, I mean, 10 years, I don't know if that's the right number, but pick a number of years greater than 10 or something like that. And really, all that I did was I would do all the things that we've discussed over the last 4 series, get a proposal, build a website, hand it over. And then really the only ongoing expense that I had with the client at that point was hosting. So I'd bill them annually for the agreed fee for whatever hosting we were using. And that was kind of it. Anything else beyond that was an hourly rate. So if they needed something changing, they knew what my rate was and they would email me and do it. Then we moved to things like WordPress and what have you, and maybe some of them took the time to learn how that worked and did a bit of it themselves. But typically, the relationship was just one of a monthly billing cycle for hosting, possibly made it annual, and then get in touch with them a couple of years later and say, "Do you fancy a new website? Yours is looking a bit out of date." That was it.
Yeah, and certainly in our, I guess, circle of WordPress people who build sites for clients, I mean, no one really considers not having a care plan now to offer. But I do remember, because I was kind of really, that's when I got more serious about WordPress, because it started becoming the profession back in 2013. And I remember this guy, Ryan Sullivan, and there is another guy, I'm sure he's Dean something, who they both kind of set up in that same year. No one really talked about it, so they had to explain what they're doing, this WordPress thing. So Ryan Sullivan was from a company that's still running called SiteCare. And there are just tons of them now out there who just, that's what they do, isn't it? They, you give them your WordPress site and for a monthly fee, they will look after it and update it and make sure it's all running tickety-boo. And since we've all adopted this, haven't we? Thought, well, we'll have some of this.
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing. Back in the day, when I was building websites with, well, I mean, really prior to CSS even, it was tables and then we've talked about this a lot. CSS came along, but it was basically a bunch of HTML files in many cases, just embedded, and I had to hard code the links into each page. And, this is really like 20 years ago. So it was just flat HTML files. There was no JavaScript, there was no CSS, it was just the files. That was so simple. And there was really, you had almost no... I couldn't have even dreamt of an avenue of trying to say, well, we need to, make sure it's secure and that things are updated, because there was nothing to update. It was just, it was just flat files. And then I started using PHP, and all of a sudden you'd introduce this LAMP stack into the process. And so that needed to be maintained. And then moved to CMSs, Drupal, Magento, and all of the dependencies that would go with that. So you've got a LAMP stack and then modules and plugins, and then finally coming over to WordPress, you've got all of that to maintain. And it was kind of like, it's curious, the more you think about it, the more we add to the complexity of what we built, the more that we can claim we need to maintain it.
Yeah, exactly. We talked for some time before getting ourselves partly depressed, really, because the thing that because carrying on really a little bit from the conversation we had last time, where I was talking a little bit about Jamstack, which is, if you like, an attempt to get away from that, to keep it to the simple things. Because once you used to build your HTML sites, that was it. They would work for all time, because, I mean, although there might be changes with browser support and how the spec would go for HTML and CSS, really, even when they deprecate something like the bold tag in HTML, it still works on all of the browsers, so nothing was ever going to break.
Right.
And it was just delivered, so you didn't have a server to maintain as such, not a complex one with an operating system. So but also, so we see that challenge.
But in that era, I also think nobody had any kind of exposure to computers, really. I mean, people use the computers for much more rudimentary things. Their life was probably less dependent upon the computer. And then over the last 20 years or so many industries and so many people have become really dependent on it, and they've understood more and more in the news, things like things getting hacked and servers getting taken over and websites getting compromised and passwords getting stolen en masse from databases and so on and so forth. There's now this whole vernacular of people really understanding that there are actual pitfalls out there. But it is interesting that it didn't exist and now it does exist. For me, I think the whole idea of maintenance plans came from my time in WP Elevation, which I can't remember when that was, but it was a while ago. And that was the first time I'd even really considered that this was a thing, that there was money to be made by offering what essentially amounts to insurance. Sort of saying, okay, if something goes wrong, we'll take care of it. We'll also take care of things on a daily, weekly, whatever basis in terms of updating things. But really, all that you're doing is saying, we're going to insure you against failure, against things going wrong.
Also, I mean, it had its appeal. I mean, I wouldn't be able to manage without running some kind of hosting and care plan, because working project to project, it means you've got nothing that ties you over in between. You got to get too much that you can't take on or not enough, and this ties it over. So it was a solution for us and a way of keeping a relationship with the client. So there's some good things. I mean, in some ways, I think the maintenance plan is a kind of failure of the technology that we use, but also it's kind of a sign of the success, because it's more vulnerable to breakage because we do so much more clever stuff than we used to do. With dynamic content. And, so it's kind of a bit swings and roundabouts with it. But it's interesting. WordPress itself has started to address some of that issue, haven't they? By, putting in things like the health checks, the automatic updates that we've got now, the ability to override plugins. That was a key thing for me if you wanted to, without having to FTP it or something if you want to replace a new one. So, and there are a few other things I'm, kind of there to deal with the person who doesn't have someone like us to offer a maintenance plan, a way of being able to maintain WordPress.
It's curious, isn't it? The whole idea of going to the client and saying, we're going to build your website, and eventually getting onto the process of we're going to do it with WordPress. And WordPress requires a server, and then it requires some sort of LAMP type stack, and then it requires WordPress itself, and then it requires probably plugins. And this is what we're proposing. And because we're proposing that, we're also proposing that that is liable to get hacked at some point because of what we've suggested to you. And so because we've suggested that you use this stack, this technology stack, we're also going to suggest that you pay us a bit more money so that we can insure you against failure of the stack that we're suggesting.
I know, it's terrible. I mean, obviously with the conversation I'm having, your pitch to me today, I might come in and just go, take no notes of him. He's selling you a duff here. You'll be looking after it forever.
Yes. But
come with me. I'll do your HTML site.
Yeah, but the fact is WordPress, it's fabulous. It's 42% plus of the web. Loads of people use it. And that is just what you need to make it work. If you want the convenience of a page builder and a CMS which costs absolutely nothing, you don't really have any other options. If you like, you've got to deploy those things, and those things are run on an open source basis. They're updated as and when by basically volunteers. I know that in some cases there are people who are seconded out from their companies and what have you, but generally speaking, a lot of this stuff is done by volunteers. But that's just the way the technology is. And if you want the convenience of WordPress and the freedom that it allows you, and the fact that it is free, as in beer, then you run the risks of all these things. So in order to mitigate those risks, I think clients kind of understand. On my website, which really I'm not updating all that much anymore, I had a whole laundry list of calamitous things that could happen. That was kind of my pitch to people who I was hoping would come on a care plan. I've just built the website, and then I kind of introduced them to all the things that could go wrong. Yes. And that was the way that I pitched it.
I think that's pitching it at the wrong time and in the wrong way is I think the big concern with this one. I think where do you start? Do you start at the very beginning where you're saying, okay, this is a stack I'm going to use, and it comes with these downsides, but we can do something about that, but it does mean an ongoing expense. And do you start with that, or is that going to be the thing that puts them off in the beginning? And then also, if you do it later, I think you're more desperate, if you like, to sell the fear, sell on the basis of instilling fear in people, which is never a good look, is it? So it's a tricky one, I think, how you broached this whole thing.
Yeah, I think the timing of it is really important, and you're right about all of that, because obviously, if you talk about it from the beginning, then you're going to potentially raise alarm bells, because they're going to, clients are going to be thinking, wait, hang on a minute, you're telling me there's all these problems in the future. But if you leave that conversation until after the website's built, it almost feels like you just said, you've sold them a doff. You've built something and then immediately turned around and said, hang on a minute, there's all these problems that we've now got to deal with. So getting that timing right is really good. I definitely tried it the second way I just mentioned, where I didn't mention anything and then the website was built. And then I said, look, we should now get into the discussion about care plans. And on the whole, I found that less effective. I found that it was much easier to be honest up front and say, look, I'm going to build you this website, but please have an understanding that just because it's built doesn't mean that that's the end of it, that you can walk away from it. There will be things. And I think that conversation is increasingly easy to have because everybody now sees their smartphone updating. Everybody sees their computer updating, and they realize that things are vulnerable, and it's nobody's fault. It's just that hackers are always interested in taking things down and discovering new exploits that nobody realized was there.
I think you're right. There is an acceptance of it, and also because of the popularity of WordPress. They know it's a WordPress site, and you say that comes with WordPress. They kind of accept it. So I don't think most people at the moment, because of its popularity, will think you took a wrong route with your stack, so they'll accept the payment. So I think it's a little bit easier. I found that one of the difference between this moving to the agile from the traditional, like it was more difficult because of the project-based stuff to try and communicate that well, where with the agile, I find it easier because I'm not really selling the platform any longer. What I'm doing is selling the ongoing help to try and raise their profile online through whatever ways we want, and bring in what I know about user experience, if you like, into that equation over the long term with low costs. So I tend to think, it's not like I've sold them a product. It's not like I forgot to tell you the thing that I'm giving you comes with this problem, because it doesn't work like that. It's more about our relationship than the technology.
Yeah. Whichever way you look at it, I really do think this is a profession in its own right. That is to say, I think that, well, we know for a fact, don't we? There are, I'm going to say dozens, that could be completely overdoing it, but there are dozens of companies that do just this. You can, if you are unwilling to do the maintenance of your long-term clients, you can just send them over to a service like, well, the one that springs to mind is GoWP. They'll take that burden from you. I'm fairly confident that they will also sort of masquerade, if you like. That's probably the wrong word, but it will appear that the care that is being done to the website, the updates that are being done, and potentially any back and forth with support, they make it such that it looks like it's actually you and your team doing it. So definitely this is a profession in its own right. Whether or not you can turn all of your clients to the point where you lose that feast and famine cycle is another question. I managed to get a proportion of my clients onto care plans, but because the websites I was building were, affordable, shall we say, it wasn't that often that I strayed into the gigantic budgets. That was a more difficult thing to do. Most of my clients were happy to risk it, and then if something did go wrong, get it fixed on an hourly rate after the fact.
Yeah. I've dealt with this by not charging people much, and this is the next thing we want to talk about is, can you separate the maintenance from the hosting? And my conclusion very early on was no, and people know hosting. So effectively I sell them a kind of more top of the range hosting solution, which is what they're getting. And if you like, the care side of it comes free.
Yeah. Okay. So just what do you mean by top of the range hosting there? That's interesting.
Well, I'm charging about £300 a year for what most people are on. There's a higher option for that. So it's not, but it's profitable for me, and everybody comes on it. Literally everybody comes on it. And, because of the way it's not too much, it's the cost of what hosting would be, about 25 quid if you were going with something like WP Engine or something in that range. And I think they're getting a service like that. So really, I chuck in the maintenance as a separate. But It's really hard to know. I don't think they really see the maintenance. They just see the hosting with me. So maybe I'm not really, well, they appreciate it when things need to be fixed that I've done it. But I don't think at the point of sale, they see it as that. And when they talk about it, they're renewing hosting, not maintenance.
Yeah. So you're running your own servers from, let's say, a service like DigitalOcean, but you're taking on the burden of a managed WordPress hosting company. So you will fix things if they go wrong. You are doing backups. You will restore those if necessary. And if something gets hacked, you're also offering to roll back or fix, whichever is the most appropriate. You're taking all that on, and the price point is about £300 a year for that. Okay.
We've got a whole bunch of questions out of that, just what you've said there. We should ask them to us. Let's start with the first one. What do you think here? Can you separate the maintenance from the hosting?
Yes, if you don't do the maintenance. If you simply say, okay, here's your website, I'm going to host it for you. And hosting is literally keeping it on the website, keeping it on the internet. So, it's on a computer somewhere, but there is absolutely no expectation that if anything goes wrong, that it will be fixed unless there's an hourly fee. So, but that's very explicit, isn't it? And I definitely remember one client in particular who couldn't get that into their head. They were paying a really modest hosting fee because we'd had this exact conversation, and I actually had it in writing, as luck would have it, where they wanted the most affordable ongoing cost. And I said, the most affordable ongoing cost is hosting. You can find your own host, or you can use something that I recommend. And they used something that I recommended, but they paid the bill. So they set up their own account and paid the bill. So essentially, as far as I was concerned, I didn't really have any interaction with that client anymore. But they seemed to have it in their head that because they were paying for hosting, that I was in some way responsible for the maintenance of the websites. And we had a fairly fraught conversation where I just said, look, you've completely misunderstood. This is not in any way, shape or form what you've signed up for. You're not even paying me. You're paying your hosting company. And then they were sort of like, oh, the lights came on and they were like, oh, okay, got it. And I can't even remember what the problem was. I fixed it. It was an hourly rate thing. And then they came on my care plan, which was actually turned out to be quite a good interaction in the end. But yes, I think you can separate it. But I don't know whether you would want to in this day and age, because it feels like you're leaving, well, to use that phrase, leaving money on the table.
Yeah, I'll just share my experience of, I started just with the care plan because, I was doing work for a friend and she was recommending the cheapest ongoing hosting for them. So they went off with a provider who was very good, but got bought out. So when I did this very low cost maintenance thing, just to do their updates and check other stuff, it really didn't last for any length of time at all. I had to sort of kind of lose people because I couldn't do the updates a lot of the time. It had a separate server for the databases than it did for the platform. And I literally, most of the time, we couldn't do through MainWP, which was the tool that I use. I couldn't do the updates, and I just thought, this is really difficult. But also, I kind of realized when there was some early query came in where it was clearly a hosting issue and they thought it was my issue. And I thought, do you know what? I'll never be able to do this. If I can't control the PHP version, and these days it's even harder because if they set up the account, everybody's got security on it now. So it usually needs to send them a pass to be able to log in. So it's not like they can give you. So suddenly, PHP versions, databases need to be all up to date. Allocation of memory could change as your host. I thought, no way can I separate it. But what's interesting, you made to this point, I forgot about it. Some of these hosting companies are effectively doing your WP maintenance for you as well, aren't they? Yeah,
this whole idea of a managed WordPress hosting company has become a really popular thing. In fact, some of the biggest names in hosting in the WordPress space are offering exactly this. They'll do all the updates, they'll monitor whether or not it's an effective time to update the PHP version, and they'll email you with, when it's going to happen and all of that. And they might not go as far as updating the plugins, but WordPress kind of takes care of that now if you wish it to. But they will honor fixing things. If it goes over to their platform and something breaks as a result of let's say a hack, they will honor the fixing of that. So yeah, a lot of these companies, I'm thinking of things like WP Engine and Pagely and Pressable and these kind of things. They're all doing exactly that.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. With Miss A, let's assume she's a city lawyer. She's going to get a fair bit of money, and you've won the job for her. So when it comes to you're building a largely, we decided, I think, static site for her. What do you think? Not thinking of your own business interest here, but what do you think would be the best advice you could give her for her ongoing support and maintenance? Would it be to adopt one of these services, who, good hosting where they take care of that?
Yeah, do you know what? I think it really depends. You would know the client and you would know their budget. If they'd been nitpicking the whole time about, £10 here and £20 there, you'd have an impression that there's not a lot of money in here. But I guess to some extent, an ideal scenario would be that your care plan could afford for you to put it on some managed WordPress hosting company. There's so many caveats around that sentence. If you know what you're doing, you don't need to go to that length, do you? If you really do understand what you're doing, then you could set this stuff up on a completely empty box. You could install Linux and you could install PHP and MySQL and do all of that yourself. But my guess is that the people listening to this, they're in the process of building websites, not doing all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it would be kind of nice to think that the budget was there to go to a managed WordPress hosting company. You could send it over there. Then if there's any problems, you could interact with them and get it all fixed. In another ideal world, you'd use a service like GoWP to do all of that for you. But it really all depends upon the budget. My typical scenario would be these days, I think, I'd set them up on something that, it could be DigitalOcean, Droplet if they had a small budget. It could be one of these managed WordPress hosting companies if they had a small budget. I would take care of the updates of the plugins. I'd kind of rely on the hosting company should the site get hacked to take that on if the budget allowed. It's difficult. It really is. There isn't a one size fits all, is there?
No, I've decided that I largely like managing my own servers and looking after sites, but I've been very cautious about using a very trusted stack of plugins. And I think we should talk about the other thing we've got here. What are we actually maintaining and what's our responsibilities? I mean, is our maintenance covering things that the client breaks? That I assume not. That's going to be, if they've gone in there and fiddled around with something, they have to charge. They need to pay us separately for that fix.
Yeah,
I guess.
I guess the problem here is unless you've got some sort of logging, it's difficult to prove that, isn't it? So how do you prove that the client did something? I mean, hopefully you've got an honest client who comes to you and says, "Oh, nightmare, I went in and clicked save and now I've got a white screen." You'd be like, "Okay, great. That's very honest of you. Thank you. We know it was you." But I also imagine there's quite a lot of clients on there who would just say it didn't do anything. It's just broken, So I don't know. I think you'd have to explicitly put that in. But how on earth are you going to track that down without some sort of sophisticated logging? Is difficult, but I don't think you should cover things that the client breaks. No, that seems a bit generous.
Yeah, and obviously the third-party services that you might employ, hosting or care people. I mean, they couldn't really be expected to do that as well.
Yep.
But also, what about here's a software that, I mean, this is where I came into WordPress doing a big job, really, professionally anyway, for someone whose software was no longer supported.
Oh my goodness!
Their site was breaking.
Yeah.
How do we cover that?
I don't even know, because Main WP has this sort of, and I'm sure other services have the same sort of thing, but this thing which I can't remember, I think they call it abandoned plugins or something like that, and it sits in there in the list of plugins installed on all your websites, and it's red, it's like this warning, and some of them they're going to be crucial to the website functioning as it does.
Yeah.
So that good grief, that's a really difficult one, but the client may be unwilling to reach into their pocket and find a new solution with you because A, there's money that they've got to spend, but B, it might be that their whole workflow is dependent upon the functioning of that plugin and how it, the UI is what all their staff know and so on. I think that one's really difficult and a real Achilles heel in the WordPress space, especially when millions of websites out there will have .org plugins on that nobody has any right to demand updates occur because you're not paying for it. It's just there for free. I don't know. Should we cover that, or should we just issue a warning and say this is out of date? I think we should look into this, and it's going to be, there's going to be a fee for my research. I'm not sure. What do you think?
I mean, well, it's one I've struggled with because I've often started these off with the assumption. I think I've got in my terms, which of course I know people haven't read, something which say that we can only, basically we only support the things that we've put in, and also there's some sort of caveat about the fact that should it be pulled or they go out of business, and not much we can do about that. And we can't obviously maintain things which rely on other people. But I think I've kind of covered it, and I try and now I'm a bit more cautious of it. It's interesting because even though I still say to people I don't do it very well, and there's some people who just often because of staff changes go and put in plugins, and just over the last couple of weeks I've had 2 plugins that have been pulled from the repository that are free ones that are out of date. I think the repository may be at the moment cleaning up all plugins that are because both of them haven't been updated for 7 years. But it's really interesting because I had to go and remind people going, do you need this? In fact, in both cases they didn't need these plugins, they were just in there and slotted in, but that was no problem. But
so yeah, here's another thought around that. So the first one is who's paying for the licenses. So it feels like the best way to avoid a problem is to get the clients to buy the licenses, and then they know what they're getting into, and they'll be able to see for themselves that this plugin isn't getting updated, and so on and so forth. But then of course that causes more friction in that you've then got to manage the relationship with the client for the license key, and if they forget to pay, you've got to get in touch with them, and it creates all of these problems. But at least they know what they've got. But in terms of ones that are not being used, take them out for sure, absolutely. Just get all of the bits and pieces out there that they don't need. But also at the beginning, I guess you've got to have a conversation about the architecture of WordPress and about the fact that it's a minimal CSS. Out of the box, it doesn't really do much of what anybody needs. It requires all these things built on top of it. And so it's a bit like your computer at home. If you switch on a brand new Windows-based computer, it's got a few things, but the likelihood is that you're going to have to pay for other software for it to be useful in the way that you uniquely want it to be. And I guess you've just got to have that conversation and outline all of the different plugins that you're going to use right from the outset. But I also feel that I was guilty of this, and I think you've had this conversation with me before, and you probably are as well, that there are times when you kind of want to sort of pretend that you are doing all of it, and you don't really get into the conversation about plugins because you kind of want to pretend that you're the authority. And if you fall into that trap, then you don't really have a leg to stand on. But if you're more honest and say, look, I've got a plugin for your calendar, I've got a plugin for your page builder, then you've insulated yourself a bit more. Yeah,
I must admit, over the time, I mean, it's all about your own ego or your sense of feeling that you have any I don't know, any skills that you're bringing to it. So you get a bit defensive. So you do try and hide it, where these days I feel more confident that I do add something of value to the relationship. So I'm a bit more open about, I just use this, and, so I feel I've got better at that over the time, but you're dead right,
Absolutely. I mean, I remember just basically, lying's the wrong word, but kind of sort of avoiding those questions about how you're going to do this, and the truthful answer was, I'm going to download a plugin. But you would just sort of say, there's some we're going to get some code on the website that'll do this, that, and the other. Anyway, fast forward a few conversations later, it became so self-evident to me that if I said, there's a plugin over here that's $99 a year, that will fix all the problems, not one client said that's weird. They all said, okay, that's great, that's perfect, and we'll go with that. That seems like the perfect solution. They wanted to be assured that it did what they needed it to do, but nobody thought that was a strange scenario. So anybody out there who is listening to this who is going through that process of pretending that they know how to do everything when potentially they don't, I think the honesty policy there is it's not going to make your clients feel that you're shortchanging them.
And also, we had those. You kind of alluded to it when you were talking about the services, GoWP, where they white label for you. That's another thing that used to really appeal. If you could white label, that's great. You look really professional to do that. Now I've really moved against that. I think I'd just rather let them know.
Yeah,
I use this because it just keeps me safer in the long run. What
Okay.
about another one? What we're maintaining? So, what are we promising here? So, if they get hacked, are we fixing that for them, or is that part of our maintenance or not?
Well, of course, this is another whole industry, isn't it? There's a whole industry of WordPress, specifically WordPress security plugins. So that gets thrown into the maintenance mix as well, doesn't it? But obviously, that's preventative. I really don't know what the position is with some of those services as to whether, if you're on an annual plan with something like WordFence or PatchStack or all of the different stuff. I don't know if they have plans where they will step in and fix things. I'm not sure. My guess is that there would be that. But I think this is singularly the most difficult one to get into a conversation about, because you have absolutely no idea what's coming round the corner. Like you just don't know what the guys out there who are into hacking are going to come up with in the next 6 months, a year, 2 years. And some of these things, I guess, can be almost impossible to fix. Real expertise and fine-grained research needs to be done to figure out what's going on. And I know a few people in the WordPress security space who do this. And when they talk about what they're going to do to fix things, I am utterly out to sea. I haven't a clue what they're talking about. And so I don't know. I think caveat emptor a bit, really. If you're going to promise to fix everything, you might have to dig into your own finances and pocket to hire somebody should something go catastrophically wrong. Of course, the simple thing, which probably most people are doing, is creating backups and promising to restore backups as the security fix. But what if the vulnerability snuck in a year ago and just never raised its head? It just sat there dormantly. But the fact that it is in every backup that you've got means that it has to be properly expunged. I don't know. I think I promised backups, basically.
I need to reword what I say, because I say that we'll do the security fix, and I'm a little bit it's not very clear what I'm saying, because what I am thinking is that I will be. I mean, I haven't had the issue. It's only people who've gone and managed it themselves who have got hacked. It's never happened to me, and some of the software tools that I'm using that they're the ones that, in fact, recently knowing about a plugin, I didn't know it was on the site. It was the security tool. I think it was Malcare. I've got a couple of them, VirusDive, running, who told me that this is a security risk. Now, I don't think it is as such. There's no mention of it anywhere, but they're just pointing out the fact it's been pulled from the repository. So they're telling me about things that I might not know about there, and since then it's not been an issue. And I think because of the fact, and I would have to treat I should do, and I haven't done, treat care plans for e-commerce very differently to the static sites that I run, because at least I probably got some hope of being able to get rid of the hack on a static site with the backup. But with e-commerce and 50, 100 orders a day or something, heck, what am I going to do about that?
I know, and if at the beginning you are pitching yourself as the all-in-one solution, and you are going to maintain everything and fix everything, especially e-commerce, you really have to know what you've got yourself into there, because you could be jeopardizing somebody's livelihood. But the other problem with this is, you were saying about how you've never had a problem. The hackers only get better. They never get worse. And yesterday's best hack is next year's trivial hack. And I think this is I think online security and maintenance, that this is going to be a really difficult thing to know how to do. And I think promising backups is an easy way of sort of saying, this is what I can cope with. But just know that if somebody truly wants to hack your site, we might need to employ the services of an expert.
Yeah. So I think we always need to watch our liabilities, don't we, with this? We have to sort of we're offering the service. Well, shall we just talk about what we actually do, what that includes in terms of that? I mean, generally it's the plugin updates, of course, backups that we've mentioned.
Yep.
What else do we get on?
Well,
I mean, there were other smaller details.
For me, it was backups, it was plugin updates, it was uptime monitoring. So I would promise to, keep checking that I never specified a time, but basically I would say I'm going to monitor your website 24/7, and I've got lots of services which are pinging the websites constantly, and typically I'd be notified within a couple of minutes, and then I could react, and I'd be able to say I'll know about it before you do, which I think is actually probably true. But then I would throw into my care plans, depending on the tier that they chose, I would throw in things like a bit of additional time. So it might be that you would get an hour a month for, routine tasks. Let's say you want a blog post updating, or you want to change the style of the homepage. Well, send me all of the things that you want to do. We'll chunk them up, and I'll say I can manage this in an hour. So that's what you'll get this month, and we'll do the next thing next month. So there was a bit of that. That was about it, really. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, there is the image optimization service, which I include, which a lot of people include, a lot of these third parties, which are quite useful that they get. But there are some things which I've done over time because I felt they were important. So, I mean, there was always some cleaning of the database, which was built into some tool or another that would automate. But now I go a lot further than that, because it doesn't. Those automated ones just kind of clear up your revisions. If you really want to clear up your options table, because they've added in and removed lots of plugins in that time, so that starts to bloat up. So that's kind of a job. So I've started to kind of add this in just a bit at a time. When people have been with me for a long time, I don't say anything about it. And also things like running a WP debug on stuff, particularly if I'm updating some of the plugins when PHP versions you don't see the errors are all in the back end hidden and that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of these extra things in that aren't part of what I'm selling, but seem important to maintenance now to me.
Yeah, I tried. I also had, apart from the fact that there was these hours where I would do work, I would also have online meetings with them. So using something like Zoom, I can't remember what we used in the day. It was probably Skype. To have like coaching calls, talk about what it is that they want, where their website's succeeding, where it's failing. Of course, there's things like SEO, monitoring SEO as well. But also I tried and failed at things like offering email marketing campaigns, that sort of thing as well. I would send out some emails on your behalf and make sure that they look nice and design the emails, those kind of things. But typically that's it. I think we've covered absolutely everything that I would have wanted to pitch.
Yeah, I did. Oh, yes. Well, actually, next week we're going to talk about monitoring. So we will talk a little bit more about some of the things that are related to this. But yeah, so I mean, just going back to the expectations and liabilities on that, do we... how do we deal with that? Do we have a contract in place?
Well, I had a contract, but it never got invoked. I never got taken by anybody to the cleaners through the lawyers. In fact, not even any real threat of any of that. So I am probably not the person to speak about it. But I think in all of this, the one that you've got to be careful of is the security bit. You can promise to back things up, and you can check it. You can promise for the website to be up, and you can make sure that happens, even if it means that you move to another host in the middle of the night. You can do that. You can check the performance. You can be checking the SEO. You can do all of these things. But the one thing which I think is out of your control is the security bit. So I think that's where you've got to be really careful.
Yeah. I guess it's all about expectation. I think it's true of anything when we start a relationship with clients. I mean, there's a need to try and make it simple so it's easy and sellable, like we're in charge, we know what we're doing. But I think you have to, I think more and more these days, you have to start from the perspective, look, the whole medium is dynamic and changing all the time. We just can't predict the future about building our websites, how useful they're going to be, how the technology might change, and really completely change our view of what we're doing. I think to get that kind of thing over in it is a way of kind of protecting ourselves when we're offering the services, because the services that help to get rid of some of the problems that come with the platform that they have, but we can't jump ahead and know how things may change. All these things are beyond our control.
Yeah. I think really this all boils down to basically you are selling, if you are offering maintenance, you are selling peace of mind that somebody somewhere has got your back. I used to send out, hang on, little caveat there. So that's what you're selling. And because it's your business, you're interested in all this stuff. And so you think, well, the clients will take this all very seriously. I would imagine most clients do not care from day to day that any of this is happening. And I don't mean that to sound cruel. I just mean that I used to send out emails on a weekly or monthly basis to show what I'd done that week. You know, services like MainWP will say, these plugins have been updated. This is your Google Analytics, da-da-da-da-da. You know, were they ever read? Of course they weren't read. Nobody was opening those emails after the first 2 or 3 when they realized, okay, Nathan's going to be sending me these emails every week and they'll look just like this. And it's a bit like me, if my insurance company sends me an email, I see the name of my insurance company in the email subject line, and I bin it, don't want to read that, because I know there's nothing of interest in there for me. The only time I'll care is when I need the insurance. Somebody breaks into my house. Now suddenly I'm interested in my insurance company. Prior to that, I couldn't care less. I just want to pay the fee, know that I'm insured, and hope that I never have to speak to them again. I think we've got to accept that there's a bit of that the clients are getting this, it's peace of mind, but really on a day-to-day basis, they want to focus on their business, and all of this stuff is just, you know, if we need it, we've paid for it, we want to know that it's there, but, you know, we're not that interested on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, dead right there. And actually, one thing we didn't even mention here was that one of the things that goes with the maintenance plan and what a lot of people want from their tools that help them to provide that is client reporting. And that it was the key thing that got me started with MainWP, that it had it. And now I've dropped it because no one's interested.
Like, you notice straight away that they open the first 2 because it's from you and you just built the website. But 2 or 3 in, the email is broadly the same. And, you know, don't get me wrong, if your client is opening that, if you can automate that and it costs you nothing in terms of time or effort, keep sending it. But I don't think for a minute many people are going to open that after the 3rd or 4th one and scan it thoroughly. You know, maybe some litigious type of client will stick it away and, you know, bring it out when the lawyers get involved. I don't know, but yeah, I dropped all of those emails as well because I noticed that nobody was reading them for the reasons I've just said.
I don't know if our next conversation is going to be a long one talking about monitoring stuff, but there is something that I just throw it in now as a kind of segue to where we're going to talk about next. But part of the maintenance is, do you think clients think then it's your responsibility to flag up issues that might be on their site, whether they're just visible ones, or is it their responsibility to tell us? Well, we'll move on to monitoring later. And also, do they expect that we should be the ones who are, as part of our maintenance, keeping them above the law when things are changing when it comes to the web?
I don't know what their expectations are, but the only thing I can say is if I, unprompted, ever went to a client and said, I've got an idea for a way that we can improve your website, nobody found that weird. And they all loved the fact that I was bothering. So it feels to me like there was a real good win there. Nobody ever turned around and said, look, our website's fine, get lost. You know, they would basically say, really? Do you think? Okay, so if we change that in this way, you think there's a benefit to that? Yes, I do. I'm pretty certain we can improve it in this way. So I don't think you have a responsibility necessarily for that. But I think your clients will love you if you do that. And I know you do that. And I bet your clients love you for it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they do, but they certainly tolerate me.
Okay, maybe that was too strong a phrase. They'll have a more favourable impression of you, you know. It'll be like David, he's the guy that bothers and he cares and he comes to us and unprompted tells us things that we can improve. You know, whereas if you weren't doing that, maybe they would have moved on far sooner.
Yeah, We'll talk about that next time on our monitoring. We'll include that in all the sort of things you could be looking out for your clients' interests. I think you're right. That was perfect because, yeah, they don't expect it, and it's in our interest to do it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so that's the end of this one. That was series 5. Let me get this right. Series 5, episode 1. So we'll do episode 2, all about, what exactly we're monitoring in a fortnight, in 2 weeks' time. All right, nice one. Thanks, David.
Okay. Cheers.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Maybe you learned something, maybe you didn't. Maybe there's a whole load we missed out. Maybe this is all new to you. Anyway, it was all about maintenance. If you've got any thoughts about that, please go to the wpbuilds.com website, search for episode number 301 and leave us a comment there. Alternatively, go to our Facebook group, wpbuilds.com/Facebook, and you can search for the same episode and leave us a comment there. Just a couple of reminders about some of the things that we've got going this week. Remember, we've got our Black Friday page that I mentioned at the start, wpbuilds.com/black. Make it your home for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and indeed Halloween. Go bookmark it right away, wpbuilds.com/black. And our awards page, just a bit of silliness to raise money for Big Orange Heart, wpbuilds.com/awards. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place. Invoice clients and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more by visiting go.me/WPBuilds. And we thank GoDaddy Pro for their continuing support of the WP Builds podcast. Okay, we will be back next week. It will be an interview episode because we flip-flop between an interview and a chat with David Wormsley. That'll be on Thursday. We've also got our This Week in WordPress show, which we do live 2 p.m. every Monday. You can find that at wpbuilds.com/live. I hope that we'll see you at some point in the next week. If not, stay safe. Have a good week. Cheesy music fading in. Bye-bye for now.